It develops a training model that produces clients that are so independent. And now, one, your job becomes really easy, but you create a training experience where people can socialize and you can catch up with clients.
Hello. That's how it's done. Give it. Hello, everybody. Abnormally Large Z himself, Zach Couples, in the house. And folks, we're movement professionals. But are we really making our clients healthier? Are we really getting them to master the fundamentals of movement and health? That's a tough question to ask, because I think if we focus only on movement and we focus on too fancy movements when most of our supreme clientele doesn't have the basics mastered, then we're probably missing a lot of components that our clients need to really reach their goals, whether that's pain freedom, performance at the highest level, or just looking good naked. And that's why I'm juiced up as all hell to have Lucy Hendricks on this episode of the Zach Couple Show. For those of you who don't know who Lucy Hendricks is, she is a gym owner at Enhancing Life in Lexington, Kentucky, where she works with a ton of general population, specializing in those with persistent pain or autoimmune disorders, or people, this is what I love, people who don't really enjoy training. This is her bag, and she gets these people enjoying training, and it's really cool to see how she does that. She takes a holistic approach to personal training, focusing not just on movement, but enhancing sleep, nutrition, physical activity throughout the day, all the things that her clients need to be healthier human beings. We talk about a gang of stuff in this podcast. So we talk about what it takes to keep clients healthy. If you got a brand new client, what are the hashtag major keys that you need to focus on in that first year? And we also dive into a thing that Lucy does called mindful movement, which if you've kind of been turned off by yoga in the past, but you really want the benefits, or if you're like me, you're someone who's not yoga flexible, but I would love to be breathing, I would love to have the meditative component of yoga, but I just don't know how to go about that. Well, she's going to dive into her little take on yoga. And it's essentially a movement practice that has the benefits of yoga without the drawbacks. And I think you'll really like what we dive into in this talk. Also, too, Lucy is an incredible coach, and she goes through her keys to cueing her clients effectively so her job gets easier. And I think by default, if you listen to this, it'll make your jobs easier, because we need our jobs easy. We work way too much. If you want show notes for this podcast, you're going to look up zachcouples.com/Lucy. You'll get access to her bio. And also, folks, if you mention this podcast to Lucy, say Big Z sent you, you'll get 2 free weeks of her mindful movement. She's a very generous offer that she's offering to listeners who've tuned in. So please check that out. A link to that will be in the show notes. And also, too, you're going to get podcasts. You'll get access to the YouTube video if you want to watch us. And if you are on YouTube right now watching this, please just give the like button a little tap so we can help the fam grow. And also on the website, you'll get show notes and the transcripts to this podcast. Enough of me blabbing. Let's get to talking to Lucy. When I say personal trainer, what does that mean to you?
Just a joke of a career.
Really? Why do you think it's a joke of a career?
Because I feel like it's based off a really faulty foundation of all this from the start of how we get people in the industry, how we train them, what expectations we give them, how we train them to do their job, and the expectation of what they're able to accomplish with people's health.
You know, when you reflect back on your career and how you got started in this industry, did you ever get hit with that? Like, I'm working with some people and it's like, whoa, this person needs a whole lot more than what I learned in my beginning phases of my career?
I wouldn't say there was one time where it hit me. It was more of reflecting back on the first 5 years of my career, always feeling like a fraud, because right from the very beginning, I started getting invited to podcasts, seminars, and people always ask the question, what do you do to get your clients results? Which I always hated, because I was really good at getting people to lift without pain. But when people say results, they insinuate that you got them their fat loss results, sleep results, just got them healthy. And for the first 5 years, I always avoided that question or didn't really answer it, beat around the bush, and went to the strength training without pain. And then I realized that the expectation that personal trainers are able to get people to the end result, which is completely healthy, is really unrealistic, because no one has the skill sets for that.
Yeah, it really kind of requires either a team approach or extensive study outside of the personal training field. And I think it's really cool because you're trying to do that, and not trying, you're doing a lot with your gym enhancing life. So what kind of things did you first shift to that were outside of strength training without pain?
I would say the functional medicine world, and those concepts of working on your sleep, eating real food, at the time gluten-free, sugar-free, trying to go back to what your ancestors ate, and stress management, which I didn't really understand either, other than promoting people need to chill out.
Of course. Take a chill pill and you're good.
You should be less stressed, and telling people that meditation is important, but never actually getting them to do it. Maybe a handful of people tried it or tried other stress relieving activities, but there was never a process. It was more trying to create the culture where we believed in all these other lifestyle factors need to be addressed, but never actually had a system for it.
And I know you like to have a systematic and consistent approach, you might say. So once you ironed out the kinks, so to speak, with some of these approaches, as opposed to just say, try and relax when it comes to stress management, or meditation's important, sleep's important, but not having those processes in place. What was your process like of making that more systematic in your community that you train?
Getting the community on board.
So you had to sell it.
Yes.
How'd you do that?
I tried many things.
Learn trial and error. Best way to learn.
I wouldn't take this as advice, but we first started out with workshops. So we would I remember we did the first sleep workshop probably 3 years ago, and no one had signed up. So I gave away 8 semi-privates or something crazy without thinking, just wanting them to come so bad to the sleep seminar, believing if they worked on their sleep, they'll get better results and then they'll stay longer, which the money won't be an issue. And clients knew that was a horrible business choice, so they ended up coming but never picked up the sessions. So that was a try, and people did buy blue blocking glasses, the sunlight lamp, and started walking in the morning and started turning off their overhead lights at night. So it did change a little bit, and some people got a little bit results. But then what really went well was the following year we did a sleep challenge. And we didn't want to attach the winning to results, just because everybody's so different. And that's one thing that makes this so hard, is you can't really control the outcome in a group setting unless you had one-on-one coaching. But that takes so much attention and skill sets that most trainers don't have to control a bunch of other aspects that influence someone's ability to get results. So what we ended up doing was we attached the outcome to participation. So everybody had a checklist of, I think, 12 things that correlate to sleep hygiene or influence sleep hygiene. And you had to check, I forget, so many each day, posted on Facebook. And each time you posted a picture, you got your name and a chance to win a Oura ring, which is like a $300 ring.
Mm-hmm.
And that worked really well. A lot of people got amazing results, better than I thought they would. People who struggled getting up in the morning were able to get up in the morning with no problem.
Wow.
People started drinking less coffee. People started going to sleep faster. We had another client who started pushing herself harder with running. So she felt that she was working out too hard, but really she wasn't recovering enough. So when she started sleeping better, she found herself being able to push herself harder in the gym. So that was really cool.
I think it's cool that instead of focusing on the outcome, you focus on the process, because with something like meditation, I know you did a meditation challenge as well. It's like, how do you define a successful meditation? I mean, there is no success with that, whereas you were able to get people to focus more so on just habits people need to do to be healthy. Like what constitutes healthy sleep, and it's these keys. And I mean, that's fascinating that you're able to get the buy-in on that. And I think maybe, did you have a pretty good retention rate with that as well, the whole challenge?
With the challenge, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, it seems like once you take the outcome, so to speak, out of the process, it's like people still feel successful, and I think that's absolutely brilliant.
And people are competitive. So the minimum was you have to do X amount. But then, sure enough, the first person that filled out the entire sheet went on there and got a bunch of praise from us on Facebook. Then other people started going through the entire sheet as well. And a lot of people kept up with some of the routines. But anything that pushes the needle in the right direction when it comes to health. And that's what we try to teach people is you can do just about anything and you will get results. So what we try to do is at least establish the basics of all these other life factors. Mm-hmm. So that way we can start pushing the needle in the direction of better health and more sustainable results.
Yeah. So with those basics that you mentioned, and I know this is constantly changing and evolving for you because that's what you do with your processes, and that's one reason I admire you. What are some of the fundamental concepts that you try to instill in your clients when someone new comes to you? It may be like, I know you have pillars of health at Enhancing Life, so like what are some of the key habits you want a new client to exhibit within the first year?
If I were to pick 3, I would say getting a movement routine, which can also mean exercise routine, where they're consistent and they enjoy it. So finding a exercise/movement routine that they enjoy, where it's no longer a struggle to attend the gym. So now you don't have to sit there and, do I really want to go or should I just skip this week? So once going to the gym once or twice a week becomes an easy choice, that would be something that I would want in the first year. And right now, I would say the next 2 would be finding a meditation practice and getting them to teach themselves to be present and train their body to pay attention to what's going on inside and with their thoughts. And the third thing I would say would probably be walking and spending time outside. So if I were to pick 3, those would be the 3.
Why, in your eyes, are those 3 the most important? I mean, I think the movement practice makes sense because that's where people are coming to you for. Well, they're coming to you because they hate moving. But, as a trainer, that is our bread and butter. So what about the other 2? Why do you think walking is important, and why do you think meditation is important in the first things that you push?
So the reason we focus on the 3 is exactly what you said. So the movement and exercise part is our bread and butter. So it's our skill set. We have a gym. So if that's not the first priority, then we probably wouldn't have clients. So that's we are really good at getting people to enjoy exercise. And I think a reason why people can't stay consistent on a schedule is because they don't enjoy it, and it feels bad. It doesn't feel good when they leave, and it feels horrible the next day. So that's a big reason why we focus on that. The second one is building a meditation practice, training themselves to pay attention, because a lot of people have either maladaptive beliefs, catastrophic thinking, unhealthy behaviors that really are impacting their ability to get healthy. And if you can't sit there in the present moment and pay attention to your thoughts, or even recognize that you have the behaviors that you're doing or practicing in, or the self-awareness. So self-awareness is like the first step to changing any type of behavior or thought or lifestyle that you're wanting to work on. So if people don't have that, it's so hard to even change anything. And if they do change it, usually it's very short term. And that's what you're seeing everywhere else, is people lose 20 pounds and they're miserable, and then they gain it all back. So our goal is, if people do get results, it's sustainable, and they're not able to, or they don't have to go back and forth of being miserable, being on a diet, exercising hard, and then just losing it all and starting all over every couple months. So if we start a meditation practice, we can at least get the foundation that is required to change all of these thoughts and behaviors that people are having. And the walking is to get people moving throughout the day. And that helps with our number one goal, which is getting people consistent in the gym. And what we find is, if people can walk and move outside of the gym, they're able to recover faster from their workouts, which makes their workouts feel better. They progress a lot faster, so they see progress on the training floor, which gets them excited. If they're not moving outside of the gym and they're only exercising and only moving at the gym, then these people will progress a little slower, so it motivates them less.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I think with the meditation in particular, because inevitably, especially when someone's starting out, you are going to fall off the wagon in some way, shape, or form. And having the self-awareness component and the ability to bring it back to whatever it is you're focusing on probably helps them get back on track sooner than not, I would at least think.
Oh, 100%. And then that's what you need. You need the awareness to see the patterns of, when I stop sleeping and I don't pay attention to X, Y, and Z, when I don't do my movement routine, or when I don't do my morning routine of reading, getting my coffee, doing my meditating, I now notice that I go to the gym less, I start binging at night. Mm-hmm. So having this awareness of where you dropped off and what are the things that you need to do to get back is everything. Because if you don't have that, you don't know why you failed. So it's just, I failed, I suck, and then that's it. So you don't even have the keys to even get back to where you were.
Which is, again, the maladaptive beliefs, and then you go down this terrible rabbit hole, and yeah, that's brilliant. And what I think is really cool is you make that meditative practice easy to implement, because you've designed your mindful movement as a nice bridge between what you're doing in the gym and what you want to instill with self-awareness of thoughts, of how my body's moving, so on and so forth. So what led to you designing that?
So the idea of the mindful movement service that I created started out when I attended Seth Ober's class.
Yeah.
Where he...
Seth will laugh if you were listening to this.
Where he first introduced the idea of how the body and stress and trauma interact together, and how trauma and stress influences what you see in the body, and how you can use a movement practice, meditation practice, and even things like yoga to impact someone's stress or trauma, and how both of them are really connected. So that was when I first got introduced to that idea, and I worked with him online, where he did some of his work with me. And then I took a yoga class. So I am an ex-gymnast and super flexible, strong, and I take cues well. And yoga was very therapeutic for me. It was a time for 45 minutes for me to only pay attention to what was going on in my body. The muscles that I felt stretching, the muscles that I felt working, the cues that they were telling me to do. I was paying attention to that, and I got immense benefit with it when it comes to the struggles that I was having with my mental illness. But then I noticed that the people that really benefit from it are people like me, who are really flexible, take cues well, are strong, and have a background probably in gymnastics, ballet, dance, or ice skating, or they just always were really good at these types of things.
You got to express yourself, what you already knew how to do in just a unique way.
Yeah. And at the same time, I was starting to see the stuff that I was doing with our clients from a different perspective, because I train a lot of people in pain and autoimmune who have autoimmune problems. And when they would try to cancel on me because they had a flare up, whether their back flared up for the 5th time in a few months, or their Hashimoto's flared up, so they were really fatigued, I would try to get them in the gym anyways. And instead of their full on workout, I would let them do breathing exercises for about 45 minutes. So with the information that I had and the outcomes that I was noticing, I thought for the longest time that because they did all the breathing exercises from a biomechanic standpoint, they were feeling really good because we just increased all these movement options, which there's some truth to that for sure. But I think I was giving biomechanics way more credit with the information that I had. Yeah. And it was weird because I had never done those type of sessions, breathing for an hour, because at the time I had never experienced pain like that. But the reaction that I would get from clients was very interesting, which is what kept me doing it. And it was very appreciative. And sometimes they would even ask for those sessions because they enjoyed them that much. Wow. And they would take me aside and like shake my hand or like hug me, like, thank you so much for letting me come in and do that. So when I learned about stress and trauma and all of that stuff, and I took the yoga class, I realized maybe it's not all biomechanics. Maybe they felt so great because they just meditated for a whole entire hour. Yeah. And when they stopped paying attention to their body, there I was reminding them, keep tucking, keep reaching, don't lose it, keep exhaling, because I'm very detailed with my coaching. And that's when I started thinking that I could create something or a service that gave me what yoga gave me with the detailed coaching and the way I see the body, which is really good at meeting people where they're at who don't move well, people who don't take cues well, people who are deconditioned, people who are uncoordinated with their body, people who can't handle multiple instructions at once, which is about everybody. Yep, absolutely. Which is most people. And that's when I kind of blended both of those worlds and created a service called Mindful Movement.
That's absolutely fascinating because, especially I've taken a couple of yoga classes in my day. And usually I'm leaving in pain because I'm far from an ex-gymnast. And I think what you've done is you've made yoga-like things so much easier to execute for a lot of different people because you get a wide variety of clients. So having implemented that, because I know you kind of have, you implement that with your clients at Enhancing Life, but you also help people all over the world with whether they're trainers or whether they're clinicians with the same thing. So to first say like the results that you get with your clients doing the mindful movement, have you noticed carryover or what kind of things have changed for them in the gym by establishing this practice?
Their ability to take cues.
Mm-hmm. So it's made your job even easier, even though you already make it easy with your coaching.
It's crazy. I wish I can just sit down and not do anything. And I've been talking to them about it all week, last week. Yeah. You all will someone mess something up? Because this is way too easy. So we started the service last year. It wasn't a service last year. Last year was part of our meditation challenge. Mm-hmm. And I took the people who did the meditation challenge through it. And it evolved because I kept practicing with a few people. I was doing one-on-one sessions just to see how it went. And When the pandemic hit, that's when I turned it into an actual class and an actual service.
What's a typical session like? So you got, say it's the first time someone is attending your mindful movement. What does that entail?
I would say it's very similar to a training, like a strength training session with 2 or 3 trisets. So we pick 3 different exercises, go through them, and we do 3 sets of that. I don't do reps. I do more for time, just because everybody moves at a different pace. And if you really want the experience to be mindful, what I noticed with yoga was they tell you when to inhale, when to exhale, and when you should be doing these things. But everybody's moving at a different pace. So when they're telling you exhale down, half the people are up still. So instead of that, I just introduce the cues, and then people do it for time. So I'm not telling them 5 more, 3 more. I just tell them to do the move over and over until I tell them to move on to the next one. And it's a lot of the same cues that I use on the training floor, which most, if you're watching this, it's focusing on the stack position, focusing on all of the skills, or being able to coordinate your body in a way where you're achieving certain positions and certain moves. And I'm introducing one cue at a time, and that's all they're paying attention to. And that's why, what I said before, it's making my job easier, because that's all they have to focus on is that one cue. So an example of that would be, one that I like to start with is in the supine position with their feet in a 90-90 position. So as a coach, everybody who's watching this has probably done 90-90. Huh? Just yeah, I'm sure. I'm just making that assumption. And usually when you introduce this exercise, people introduce the tuck. Okay, tuck here. Now fully exhale. Now keep the ab tension and reach, and don't shrug and don't lose a tuck. And it's usually a complete failure. Mm-hmm. Or it's not a failure because you're really good at coaching, but the client is not competent in that move. You might have gotten them there, but they don't even know how they got there.
Yeah, they need you to complete the task.
Yeah, and I did that in the past so much, and it was probably an ego boost of like, I just got this person in this position, and then when I ask them how was that, they're like, I don't know what just happened. or you know, when they get overwhelmed when you ask them, where did you feel that? And they say, oh, I don't know. Let me do that again.
Yeah.
So with mindful movement, what I ended up doing was retracting all of those cues and introducing one cue at a time. And it's the example, the 90-90 position, legs don't do anything. All they're focusing on is that full exhale. So it's in through the nose, full exhale, and I'm telling them to count. Try to get to 10 seconds, and then just breathe in however. Mm-hmm. And then back over and over again. Breathe in through your nose, full breath out, and the goal is each exhale you're going further and further, and you're trying to count to like 10 to 12 seconds.
Gotcha.
And that's all they're focusing on. And the way I see it is like taking a dance class. It's you're focusing on like taking a step forward and taking a step back and taking a step forward, and you're just really getting used to like what that feels like. And then I build up on top of that. So that's the first set. The second set, I tell them doing the same thing, full exhale. At the end of the exhale, you should feel some abs. So hold that air out, and even say in your head, holding on to the tension and then letting it go. And then that's what they're focusing on for, I think, probably 2 minutes that I let them go.
So you don't even mention ab tension at all with the first round. It's just like the component of exhaling, getting air out. Mm-hmm. And then you're building on top of that.
Yeah. Or I might check in like towards the end, like everybody feeling abs at the end because they're holding their air out. Yeah. And I just get that confirmation of they are feeling abs. And if someone is like waving their hand saying no, I'll try to address it there. Like try to exhale a little harder. So if you're not feeling abs, exhale harder. So I'm getting the steps that are required to get me to the end goal, which is a full exhale with the ab tension and then breathing underneath that tension. So they do that for the first set. Second set, they're doing the same thing, holding for 5 seconds, And I also give them the right expectation, like this is going to be uncomfortable. If you feel uncomfortable, you're doing it right, which I think coaches fail with that as well. So they're in their head, they're literally differentiating, and I tell them that's their focus of holding on to the tension and then letting it go. Holding on to the tension and letting it go. So same thing, like step forward, step back. Because when people can hold on to the tension and breathe in, usually the reaction is like, did I do it right? Because they have no idea. So the third round, same thing, holding on to the tension, but this time, keep the tension. So they should know what that feels like because they just let it go for like 2 minutes. So breathe underneath the tension and then back to the full exhale. So I'm building up to that end goal. And usually in that triset, I'm also doing pelvic tucks where they're only focusing on rolling up the hips, feeling hamstrings, and letting go. Rolling up the hamstrings or the hips, feeling hamstrings, and letting go. And sometimes I'll put those together. It's whatever I'm feeling. I usually do it on the fly, depending on who's in class.
Kind of your style.
Yeah.
With those couple wins, like if you're not putting it together, say you got a bunch of newbies, which I would assume your triset would then be, let's just focus on tucking for the first move, let's focus on exhaling for the second, and then maybe reaching for the third.
Yep.
Once you have all that built up, then what does the second triset look like? Like if someone gets it with those, do you try to combine or do you focus on other things?
I will usually move on to things like all fours.
Okay.
So we'll either do some inverted quadrupeds or quadruped tucking, where I tell them like the 3 main things that you're doing in the entire class, which is training your body to pay attention and being coordinated with your body, which is also a huge thing. Instead of telling them you're learning how to do things right, they're focusing on a cue that I'm giving them. So I want you to do something a certain way. Like I want you to roll your hips instead of picking up your hips. So you have to pay attention to that. I'm giving them a visual to pay attention to, deflating their body, inflating, peeling, melting. And then I'm also giving them a feeling. So if they're doing it the way I'm asking them to do it, I should be calling out the right muscles. Like you should be feeling your abs at the end of the exhale, or you should be feeling your glutes and hamstrings at the top of the tuck. So I'm telling them what to pay attention to. So after we do the things like supine, reaching, exhaling, I usually move on to quadruped, where I'm telling them to pay attention to their back pockets. So that's one of my favorite, quadruped tucking, where they're inhaling, pulling the back pockets down, exhaling, pulling the back pockets back up. And I do, which is also taboo for people who are into breathing, extension. So yeah, don't freak out. I do let people arch their back. But this is what I say.
We got to cut camera now.
This is what I say. Work with what you have. Because I do want people to be able to arch their back and be okay, even if it's a little bit uncomfortable. So like this is what the class is for, is being able to move your body and be fine. We're not loading it. So what I say is work with what you have. So move as much as possible, or as long as it feels good. So for me, it's going to be very extreme. I can arch my back all the way and then tuck all the way. But someone who's a little stiff, I don't want them to look like me. And I don't want them to think that they need to look like me. Yeah. So they're kind of working with what they have. And I'm telling them, you are differentiating between tucking and untucking. Your back pockets are either down or they're up. So if you get distracted, where are the back pockets? Either up or they're down. And then I'll move into some supine, like putting it together, like supine reaching, like an ISO dead bug, and working with that. And then a lot of squatting.
Squatty squats, I'm sure.
Yes, squat holds.
Yes.
Where they're focusing on the same thing, the same move that they've been practicing, the same exhaling, the same feet. So I'm just telling them all the things to just pay attention to, and we progress from there.
This is nice. You give an external cue, back pockets. You give an internal cue, tuck your hips, and then you almost give like an interoceptive cue, like what am I feeling within me? And that's good because if someone doesn't hit 1 and 2, they might hit 3, and then they'll know that they're doing it correctly. So I think that's really good to build in that redundancy because it makes your job easier than
Yeah. And you always
chill.
what I learned actually recently, I've always done the 3 things, but now I see it, or I can see why it works. Apparently, people need 3 things to see a pattern. So if you can describe something 3 different ways, then they can almost see the big picture of, if I just say you're reaching your chest away from your hands, like that might not mean anything. But if I give it 3 different ways, like picture the space between your hands and your rib cage getting away from each other. Think of your upper back getting wide. Think of everything being pushed back. And then just you're kind of painting the picture so they can see the cue, because they don't know anatomy.
Yeah.
They don't know anything.
No, they don't.
And they're not aware of their own body. So you're trying to just bring the awareness to that.
Well, I imagine it probably reduces the frustration sometimes, because I've ran into this before where I'm coaching someone through an activity and I'll ask, hey, did you feel area X? And they'll say, well, no. And then they think they're doing it wrong. But if they're feeling the sense that they're doing this movement or they're envisioning this thing happening within their bodies, then you can almost point them towards, well, those are, when you do that and you can sense that your body's doing that, then you know you're hitting a victory. Side note, how pissed were you when you found out that the rule of 3s was a thing and not something you came up with?
I'm pretty pissed.
Yeah. Don't you hate when that happens? It's like, it just is nothing as original. I've had that happen a couple times myself.
Yeah, they have books on it.
Crazy. Well, and I've heard of like I think it's the rule of thirds in video, or like when you're doing PowerPoints, where you need to have like 2 or like 3 things filled on the PowerPoint, and then you need one spot blank.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like a visual thing as well. But 3 is just like a magic number. With your mindful movement, and I've noticed this when you are coaching people and you're having them work on these concepts, you're talking about consistent things. Exhale, tuck, do it in this position, do it in that position. You're a big fan of having a consistent approach. It's kind of your jam, you might say. You might say it builds fundamental soundness, which is a really good name for a seminar. It's too bad you didn't keep that. Why is a consistent approach to movement and training so damn important?
It develops a training model that produces clients that are so independent. And now, one, your job becomes really easy, but you create a training experience where people can socialize and you can catch up with clients because they don't need to be babysat. And I noticed all of these benefits when I went to the extreme, thinking that neutral spine was the only way people need to be lifting because that's the safe way to lift. And even though I was wrong in that aspect of seeing the body that way and seeing lifting that way, when I started learning that maybe biomechanics is not everything, and maybe people shouldn't fixate on posture and form because that runs into problems, I couldn't ignore all the benefits from that approach. So I had to figure out, like, how do I continue to have this approach and not have all these negative aspects? Because one of the benefits is the client independence, which is crazy. The other benefit is people can get strong but not be so consistent in the gym. Because everything looks very similar, even though an offset step up is different than a goblet hold step up or a higher step up with a Zercher hold, it's still very similar. Yeah. So even though we're loading different tissues, we're loading similar moves and similar tissues so people can get strong and also experience novelty. So I can have a step up increase in weight, but then have different variations in step ups. Same thing with squatting. If I build a consistent squat that looks the same pretty much every time, I am going to be able to progress that person by doing different types of squats. So I'm able to create that strength or increase the strength, but also give people a lot of novelty. And that's how we're able to have people who've been strength training with us for 9 years and they're still being challenged. And we are still able to find things that they struggle with. And then, too, it's not just about weight. So you have all this sense of accomplishment throughout your training program every 6 weeks that's not just attached to how much weight you're doing. So if we have an exercise that needs to be done a certain way, you now have a goal. Well, half kneeling cable pull down needs to be done with me keeping my half kneeling position, me pulling down without shrugging, without arching my back. So I have to keep all of these things and do it this way for the next 6 weeks and feel that get stronger, feel more coordinated or more efficient. And now that was progress, even though technically you could totally do more weight if it was just a seated cable pull down.
For sure.
But our clients don't see strength training that way. They see all these different exercises like a skill that they get to learn. And I kind of paint that picture of like, ooh, half kneeling cable pull down. That's what you get to learn and get stronger in for the next 6 weeks. Even though it's not going to be as challenging technically as a seated cable pull down where you can totally get more volume and more weight.
Well, the challenging coincides a bit better with what you're trying to build with your mindful movement, and it's just having a mindful practice of movement, but now we're doing it under intensity. So then that's a challenge unto itself. Like, how can I stay attuned to my body while simultaneously lifting relatively heavier weights than what you would normally do? I would also, too, think with you having consistency with your coaching, that it allows for people to not just want to work with you, but work with your Dave, work with Sierra, any other employees you may have in the future.
Yeah, it allows you to share clients, and you can still be your unique coach and have your own personality, and people will have favorites, but the problem is you don't want people, or the problem that a lot of people run into is you cancel when your favorite coach goes out of town. And that's what you don't want to happen. And that used to happen to us. If I would go out of town, people wouldn't want to coach with Dave. Or if he went out of town, his people didn't want to be coached by me. So being able to have this consistency of how you provide a training experience and how you coach things needs to be pretty consistent. That is a word, I guess.
It is the word, the word of our talk.
Consistent approach, what a good name for a seminar.
Yeah, it's pretty good, yeah. I don't know if it's as good as fundamentally sound. The reason why...
Too big of a mouthful there.
Oh, boy. Well, when you got crosettes in your mouth, everything's a little bit of a mouthful. I think it's really cool that your clients really value the novelty of learning a new skill or being able to tuck during this very challenging exercise. What is it about that type of client that gets you going? Because you're not one to work with the high-level athlete or an athlete really of any kind, because they want to push the performance envelope. They want to see the numbers go up. That's not who you gravitate towards, or who gravitates towards you for that matter. What is it about the population that you work with, which a lot of times are people who don't like to lift, or they're in pain, or they have an autoimmune disease? What is it about that population that excites you?
It just feels really rewarding to provide a training experience that people who otherwise wouldn't like to lift at all, or had never stepped in the gym, or never thought of themselves as lovers of exercise, get them to enjoy a training experience. I get them to say things like, I can't believe I like coming here. Or, I can't believe it rained and I didn't cancel. Like, get them to that point. Yeah. That's what's really rewarding, and that's what gets me excited to work with those people, is because I get these people who have never stepped in the gym or have had horrible experiences, and they literally say they hate exercise. And I know that in a month or 2 or 3, however long it takes, they're going to be a different person. And I don't tell them that just because no one's going to believe it. Yeah. But I know. So I think that's what excites me the most, is knowing what they don't know, or people who think that they're not capable of doing anything. Like, I can't lift more than 5 pounds, or I can't do squatting because it hurts my knees. Me knowing what they don't know is what gets me excited.
You can see the vision down the line, and they're their focus right now on just coming.
Yeah.
And not hurting.
Yeah. And the joke that I tell some of my clients, because the people that we do attract are very similar. And I was telling my business partner that it's so cool that we have people who would much rather be at home with their spouse, drinking wine or smoking a bowl and watching TV and eating pizza. But instead, they're here training twice a week, every week, pretty consistently. Sometimes they fall off because work deadlines and shit happens. But we created an experience where those types of people are here. Not the gym rats, the meatheads, the people who enjoy fitness, the people who are advertised to join the industry.
Yeah.
It's everyone else.
Yeah, because
regular people.
If anyone needs it, it's that clientele, because those are the folks who are going to be predisposed to having issues with health down the line if they don't nip this in the bud sooner. So I think it's beyond important what you're doing. And you might say it could be like the future of healthcare is getting people in this system, or funneling them here, as opposed to funneling them to myself, even as someone who helps people in pain and sleep and other things, but more so on the that they already have an issue side, like the pathological side. So what does the future look like for you? So where you're seeing your clients a few years or a few months down the line of where they're going to be, where do you think you're going to be, and what you see the profession of training, of strength coach, where's that going down the line, or where do you want to go if you became the queen of the S&C world?
So if I got what I wanted, first, I would want to redefine what it means to be a personal trainer, or what it means to be in this industry, and redefine what it takes to be healthy, because I think that also is come to more of an agreement where perfection is not the goal. And being healthy doesn't mean that your diet is perfect, you're always sleeping well, that you never do any drugs, that you never drink, that you never have times where you come in hungover, that you have times where you spend too much time with your friends on the weekends.
You play video games too long.
Yeah, you eat too much pizza, you travel too much and you don't take care of yourself, or you went on too many vacations. So, like, what do we need to be healthy? And redefining that, and then creating a environment, like a gym environment, where that's what we push for, where we understand that people are social creatures. We understand that people cope in certain ways, and just because we think it's unhealthy doesn't mean that people should be shamed for it. Mm-hmm. Like, what's the difference between you drinking too much caffeine, which most trainers do, and then a client smoking weed, or drinking a glass of wine at dinner? Like, what's the difference there? And
all drugs.
And also understanding that there's so many factors in someone's life that personal trainers have zero control over. So all we can do is support them. Because I think the idea now is, if you see something that's out of your scope, or a roadblock that's preventing your clients from getting results, like sleep apnea or severe mental illness, the idea that you can just easily refer out and things are taken care of is like from a fantasy world, because that doesn't happen. Yeah. One, people might not be able to afford it. Or two, I mean, I've asked someone to get a sleep study 5 times and with like 3 different people, and they won't do it, but I still have to train them. Or someone might have severe mental illness and they're already seeing a therapist, but they're still struggling. Or people are still in back pain, even though they've gone to the Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic, seen multiple physical therapists, pain management doctors. They're still in pain, and I still have to train them. Yeah. So looking at all these other factors and realizing that we don't have control over that. So what we have to do is learn about them, understand how it works, or how it's impacting our clients, and just figure out how to support them best and create a service that meets them where they're at.
I love that, yeah. And it is likely goes back to some of the stuff you talked about before. It's sustainable for the long haul as opposed to trying to hit perfection, which is completely unsustainable because you're going to have clients who are going to miss for 2 months, but they'll be able to bring them back because they know that at least if they hit some of these habits that you want to espouse for your clients and the people of the industry, they're going to be healthier individuals overall. Maybe not the pinnacle, but better than where they are now, while still being human, because it's normal to want to have pizza every once in a while, or maybe once a week for some people. So you've been amazing. I've loved having you on this podcast. Where, Lucy, can people find out more about you?
I'm very active on Instagram. So Lucy_Hendricks. I am always posting stuff on there.
A lot about her cats.
Yeah, so you must like cats.
Mm-hmm.
And you must like someone who's very feisty.
That is very true.
And my website is CoachLucyHendricks.com.
Thank you so much. It's been amazing chatting with you. We'll have to do this again sometime.
Maybe.